which is widespread these days. Did you teach them to not do that? No, really. Thank you. Then we can have Sankirtan instead of two. Under my pay grade. But nevertheless, we have to speak. Go wash it. He should wash his hand. Put his hand in his mouth. You have to teach. You know that, right? I was there when Prabhupada stopped the whole movement. Because a child, there were several hundred devotees, and the child Prabhupada saw way at the back, little baby, had his hand in his mouth. Prabhupada stopped him. Told the mother to take him out, wash his hand, and tell him, teach him to not put his hand in his mouth. Continue. Last year, on the Vyasa Puja of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada, I was speaking in Mayapur to an august assembly of Vaishnavas. Of course, all Vaishnavas are great personalities, but there were several very senior devotees, and I considered it a great honor to have been asked to speak on that occasion in front of all of them. And if you want to put it like that, something of a reward for having compiled that book, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Vairava. So I didn't expect the august presence of Radhe Shamprabhu here today, but it's very kind. He's come to here. When I was researching Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Vairava, I did quite some research, not just on whatever I could find, mostly in the Gaudiya magazine and writings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in Bengali, the kind of Bengali that most Bengalis can't understand, because there were things that I couldn't understand. And I would ask some educated Bengalis, but if they're not in this line, they won't understand. Even what to me seemed like ordinary words. And once there was a passage, I got to Gopi Purana, and he couldn't understand it either. And it wasn't due to typos. It was just the language is so hard to understand. I also, that was a major source of material for me. I also interviewed whatever godbrothers of Srila Prabhupada I could find at that time. Still, there were quite a few present in the world. But I also did research into the current situation in the world and in India and in Bengal at that time. Political situation, social currents, religious currents, in order to try to, for our understanding, frame Srila Saraswati Thakur. In other words, present him in his own context, because Bengal, where he was most of the time, Bengal in the beginning of the 20th century is very different to Bengal today in many ways. So I tried to give some perspectives on the Indian independence movement and various philosophical challenges he faced. But actually we can't understand him through that, if we can understand him at all. We should understand him. If he's totally beyond the range of our understanding, then there will be no purpose of in him coming to this world, we can understand him by his mercy. Same as Krishna, we can understand him by his mercy. Atapite deva padambuja dvaya prasadale shana grihita devi janati tatvam bhagavam mahimno achanya ekopi chiram vichinam. However much we try to understand Krishna by our own ratiocination, or mental and intellectual faculties, we can't understand anything by that method. But we can understand him if we get a drop of his mercy. So the same for the Vaishnavas. But one of the main points that, I'll say about this, because why he did, what he did, he was preaching the message of the Absolute Truth, but in a particular time, place and circumstance. And that is a challenge of our acharyas to maintain the tradition while presenting it in a manner that can be accepted by people in particular time, place, and circumstance. The message of Godhead is the same in all times, places, and circumstances. It's relevant to every jiva, but the manner of presentation may be somewhat different in different times. So he utilized modern facilities, and as I mentioned, modern at that time. At this time we wouldn't even have a clue what they are. How many of you have ever sent a telegram? Nowadays telegram means some popular app, is it? Yeah. But it used to mean if you want to communicate something quickly, then you write it or dictate it, and you pay per word, and it's sent as quickly as possible. It's quite costly. Dial a number. No one dials a number. Making a phone call. And it used to be dialing. There's so many things. The world has technologically changed so much, and technology has changed the world so much, and it's changed people's mentality. Not just the products of the technology, such as Telegram, Instagram, YouTube, various websites. Before that there were newspapers. But just the fact of using technology has changed people's mentality, and even physically it's changed people, because people are unhealthy physically due to not doing much work and having sedentary occupations. Anyway, there's a huge topic. But to some extent, we have to examine the teachings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in terms of the time, place, and circumstance in which he appeared. Why did he do this, and that? Why did he utilize modern technology at all, which many purists at the time, if you want to be a sadhu, you don't use things like that. You don't use radio. It's not for sadhus. Nowadays we see the more well-to-do Babajis in Radha Kund have air conditioning in their bhajan kutis, which was, of course, air conditioning was unthinkable for anyone, but to have such comforts And for sadhus he was criticized for using electric fans and so many other things. There was a time in India, well at that time there were many people who were against using English. They were against having Western and modern style sugar or anything which is Western in its origin. Sugar and so many things. Of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was raised by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was also a product of the modern world very much. If you want to see from the exoteric perspective. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was educated in English and he had his sons educated in English. The outlook on life is very, very different. Here we see that the men and the women are sitting separately, which is not there in many ISKCON centers in the West, unfortunately. But normal in those days was to not be separate, but they'd be separated by a screen. You wouldn't even see them. Attitudes toward gender and sexuality have changed a lot, but it was already starting in those days. Therefore, one thing I didn't put in Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava, maybe if and when I do an update, which I'm thinking of, I'll put that in. That in the Navali Dham Pracharani Sabha, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur founded, Siddhanta Saraswati was the secretary, so they put a list of aims and objects that was published in, I can't remember, maybe Nadia Prakash, can't remember where it was published. So there was a list, and the last one was, I'll say it in Bengali, but I can't remember exactly, but there's an important word in there. Kono Strigon Ei Shabhai Kono Pod Nibena. So no woman will have any pad, which means it could mean they can't be a member at all, or it could mean they can have no position. Which gives the idea that, yeah, it was definitely already there. There were moves for the education of women, and it was considered a widow remarriage, which actually, those two things are not necessarily against Vedic norms, because in some dharma, well, education of women, that was there in Vedic culture to some extent. And widow remarriage was allowed by some of the Dharma Shastra compilers. But anyway, you can see what a difference there is. That in attitude, that's just one factor in society. Now we can't understand Saraswati Thakur simply through understanding how he reacted and responded to external trends. He compiled a booklet called Rai Ramananda, about Rai Ramananda, in English. And in the first part of the book, Srila Saraswati Thakur summarized what we know about Rai Ramananda, which is almost wholly from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then in the second part of the book, he began, which is about the conversations between Rai Ramananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the beginning of that, he said, actually the first part, that's only for outsiders. That's just an That's just for people who are interested in the material subject matter. It's Chaitanya Lila, but if it's taken as just as historicity, or history, just taken as history, then we can't understand what the point is. Which are the exchanges between, oh, ladies leaving. Are you feeling upset because of what I just said?
No, Prabhu, actually
You have to go. You have to go to work, which is also unthinkable in those days.
Yeah, I lied and I came.
You lied and you came.
Yeah,
Well, according to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, that's acceptable. But then you should stay. Because there was one person, oh, that's another whole story. It's in Bhaktisiddhanta. He said that if you're hearing Hari Katha and you get the news that your son is dying, stay and listen. You will in another lifetime. All right. So the dealings between Rai Ramananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may be different in different times they come. May not be exactly the same, but the teachings will be the same. This was a major point in Saraswati Thakur's preaching, what he called morphology and ontology. Ontology is a philosophical term, means understanding the essence. It's a term in English, one of the 4 basic subjects of philosophy as understood in Western philosophy. Morphology is a term which is largely used in biology. Morph means body. Or form to be more exact. So Saraswati Thakur would say we're concerned with the ontology and not the morphology. The morphology is the Gaudiya Math institution, having an institution which he never registered, actually. Buildings, magazines, diorama exhibitions, the way he dressed, the acceptance of titles, the acceptance of sannyas. Now, all this is spiritual because it's used in the service of Krishna, but it's not in and of itself spiritual. To have buildings is not in and of itself spiritual. If it's used in Krishna's service, then it's spiritual by association. But that is the morphology, the outer form that is seen. But what is the essence is the teaching. So Srila Saraswati Thakur this is a major point in his teaching, that Krishna cannot be understood by materialistic understanding. He railed against attempting to understand Krishna in historical terms or psychological terms or sociological terms, anthropological terms. There's a well-known paragraph which he wrote as the first paragraph of his foreword to the English rendition of Sri Brahma Samhita, which I will read, which is relevant in this regard. The materialistic demeanor cannot possibly stretch to the transcendental autocrat who is ever inviting the fallen conditioned souls to associate with him through devotion or eternal serving mood. The phenomenal attractions are often found to tempt sentient beings to enjoy the variegated position which is opposed to undifferenced monism. People are so much too apt to indulge in transitory speculations even when they are to educate themselves on a situation beyond their empiric area or experiencing jurisdiction. The esoteric aspect often knocks them to trace out immanence in their outward inspection of transitory and transformable things. This impulse moves them to fix the position of the immanent into an indeterminate, impersonal entity, no clue of which could be discerned by moving earth and heaven through their organic senses. So that explains it. Actually, we could have a whole talk just unpacking all of this. The lines of this booklet will surely help such puzzled souls in their march towards the personality of the immanent lying beyond their sensuous gaze of inspection. Anyway, the essence of all this is that by our material faculties, we can't understand Krishna, who is spiritual. Spirit cannot be understood by matter, by any amount of material examination, rationalization, logic. We cannot understand transcendence. We can use logic this far. Logically, we can understand that by logic, we cannot understand the spiritual. Then we have to come to a different system of epistemology, which epistemology is another of the four main strands of Western philosophy. Another one is logic. What's the other one? Anyone know? Ethics. Now, in this regard, or with this understanding, I want to speak a little bit about Sir John Anderson. We've come here to discuss Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and in the course of doing so, I want to discuss a little bit about Sir John Anderson. How many of you have heard of Sir John Anderson? No, none. Well, he is mentioned in Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava. He was an exceptional personality who visited Mayapur. He was the governor of Bengal at the time of the British Raj, and he visited Mayapur. Now, at the time, which was January 1935, just a little under 2 years before Saraswati Thakur concluded his pastimes in this world, although no one could have guessed at the time. But at the time, Sir John Anderson was a much bigger figure in the world than Saraswati Thakur. You have all heard of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Nowadays, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is much better known than is Sir John Anderson. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was an important enough figure that Sir John Anderson came to Mayapur at his request. But in terms of worldly importance, Sir John Anderson was much more important, which is why they invited him to come. And again, we're talking about why he did why Saraswati Thakur did what he did. John Anderson was an exceptional person. Actually, the British Empire was established and functioned due to many Well, one of the main reasons was due to many exceptional people, such the likes of whom I don't know if you can find in Britain today. There was an education system which is much declined. And even when I was going to school, the education was just... But the education system, and this is interesting because Srila Prabhupada said that the Gurukul is meant for producing men of character. So the education system in Britain was aimed at producing men of character who could go around the world and sustain and uphold and maybe even expand the British Empire, with the understanding that we are the most civilized people in the world. We are civilized. And others, if you cross the English Channel to France and Europe, they used to think of still Britain and Europe, and they didn't think of Britain as being part of Europe. Europe's down, not on the same level. And America, uncultured people, the British would think. Of course, there have always been many uncultured people in Britain. There's nothing new. Nowadays they have football hooligans. Not nowadays, it's been going on at least since I was a kid. But it's nothing new. They always had such kinds of people in Britain, at least since the Middle Ages. But there was always an upper class also, the aristocracy, who were considered on a different level. They were considered very civilized. By Vedic standards, not civilized at all. I don't know how far I can get into this, but taking bath was maximum once a week. For anyone in Britain. Even when I was a child, and it probably still is for many. But there was an idea that with Christianity, we have strong morals, and we need to go around the world. This was the justification for going all over the world and conquering different countries, that we have to bring the gifts of British civilization to the world. And almost all the British people, it was just accepted, everyone accepted it. The British are a superior race, and we have to bring the gifts to the savages in Africa and Asia, especially. These were the two main loci of the British Empire, although it was spread in all continents except North America. Well, yeah, Canada, but that had already become... Anyway, that's Dominion status. And the Caribbean, which is kind of North America. So definitely, they did produce men of character, men who were ready to go out and accept difficulties, and who had a strong moral sense. I was saying the difference in gender, in attitudes with gender and sexuality. In those days in Britain, people would get married and stay married throughout their life. And divorce was considered something very bad, which was why a little later the heir to the throne of Britain had to abdicate from that role because he married a divorcee. And the present King of England is married to a divorcee. and no one gives a damn. So you see how attitudes are, that's just one thing. So that was pretty much all over the world. In India it was different. For different higher class people were expected to be married. If you marry someone, you remain married to them throughout life. Although polygamy among many castes was accepted. But among many tribals, they would swap around and they didn't have a saptapadi wedding or any such thing. They weren't considered Hindus. They had their own thing going on. So John Anderson was a product of the British Empire, and he was a very moral, upright man, and as was expected and the condition for being in such a position as the governor of Bengal. He was altruistic in his outlook toward the people of Bengal. He did things to try to improve the condition, as did many of the leaders of the British Empire. Nowadays we hear of many of the bad things that happened in the British Empire, and there were many bad things. But taking steps to, one of the major things Sir John did was to change the tax system and the distribution of taxes, because as in India today, a lot of tax from the states goes to the center, which redistributes. So that was to the states. They didn't have states in those days. There were 3 presidencies, right? There was Kolkata, Madras, Bombay. So Governor of Bengal means not just West Bengal as we have it now, and not even just West Bengal and East Bengal, Bangladesh, but also Assam, what's nowadays Assam, Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, approximately. Assam and the whole northeast. So not much money was coming back to Bengal, and there was severe problems. So he took steps to reform that. And he was definitely of the outlook that it is the duty of the British rulers to act for the benefit of the Indians, with the understanding that the British are as if appointed by God himself to be the rulers. It is their natural position. And the Indians, they should be subservient. That's their proper position. And sometimes the British did things which benefited the population by defeating local kings who were tyrants. You know about that? They very much mistreated their population. They would just kill people at whim, some of them, not all of them. But what was going on in India at the time, and it was picking up steam more and more, was the movement for Swaraj, the Indian independence movement. And it was especially active in Bengal and North India in general. But especially that many of the revolutionaries came out. Well, there were different approaches. Of course, Gandhi's approach was to try to do it by peacefulness, and there are others. Subhash Chandra Bose wasn't the first, by any means, to think of revolution. So, in the Bengali independence movement, or the Indian independence movement, there were figures who were directly members, and there were others who were viewed with suspicion by the British. Vivekananda was viewed with suspicion because he wanted to promote Hinduism, and Aurobindo Ghosh, these are from Bengal. He was a revolutionary and he ran away to Puducherry, known as Pondicherry, which was a French governed territory. So the British didn't go and get it, although they tried to get it through the French, who wouldn't agree. So Bengal was politically charged against the British, and Sir John Anderson became known as the most shot at person in the world. He survived several assassination attempts as the governor of Bengal. However, there were some who promoted, some Indians who promoted cooperation with the crown. And one of them was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, following the lead of his father, who was a government servant. He was a British government servant. And he said that we have no argument with the British if they're ruling the country. Well, that was previously under the Muslims also. That if the Muslims were ruling in a keeping the peace, as some of them did, it wasn't that Muslims were killing Hindus left, right, and center all the time. To live in this country, they had to see that the economy was functioning and they would do things to improve the economy. Otherwise, if the economy is not good, then the rulers, the kings, are also not in a good situation. So the idea was that we respect the king as being a representative of God. And Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said that the British can be the rulers and that they maintain the peace. They're giving us facility to... Because there was, among the British, there were two strands of thought. One was that regarding Hindu religion. One was from the Christian missionaries, we have to overthrow it. And another was from the traders, who thought that, no, we don't want to let them do whatever damn thing they like. We want to do business with them and get rich. And at one point, the idea to overcome there was another more insidious manner of undermining Hinduism, because famously, now it's famous, Lord Macaulay said that as long as the Hindus remain Hindus, we can't properly govern them. So we have to undermine their Hinduism by saying that it's all nonsense. And we have to educate. There was a debate among the British. We should promote education, widespread. Should it be in Sanskrit or in English? The British themselves were discussing this, and then they went for English. So Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur was a result of the British education, and he had his sons educated in English language. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati went along with that. As famously, when our own Srila Prabhupada first approached Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, then a young man, Abhay Dey, gave the objection, which seemed perfectly plausible, that to talk so many things about religion is okay, but first we have to throw off the shackles of the British. Because who will listen to our message if we're a slave nation? And Saraswati Thakur said that spreading Krishna consciousness is so urgent, it can't wait for any political adjustment. So within the present, or at that time, status quo, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur thought it best to cooperate with the British, because if you get sidelined, then your attention goes away, just like we see among devotees nowadays. There's a lot of interest in Hindutva, and you get so much into all this stuff that we forget that we're supposed to be cultivating pure Krishna consciousness beyond any designations. So Saraswati Thakur cooperated. In the beginning of his teachings, the British were suspicious, as they were of anyone who came to prominence, and especially Hindu leaders. Of course, Saraswati Thakur wasn't a Hindu, but from the external point of view, he was a Hindu. So they were suspicious, and they would send spies, Indians, because of the British. No Indian would go to listen to someone speaking, and if they did, it would be quite obvious that they're British. So there would be Bengali spies, and of course they're speaking in Bengali, which some of the British people also learned the local language. So there were British appointed spies. It's not that everyone was against the British, otherwise how could they have run the country for so long? They were sent by, and eventually the British came to accept that, yeah, they're on our side, they're okay. We can trust them. And that was very helpful in the activities of the Gaudiya Math. For instance, several years before John Anderson came to Mayapur, a post office was established there, in the middle of nowhere. Probably most of you have been to Mayapur. You've seen the Jogapit, Sri Chaitanya Math, Advaita Baba, Srila Sangha. Those are the original Gaudiya Math temples in Mayapur. Underneath Mayapur. When Saraswati Thakur first went to Mayapur, or he was sent there by Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, the Jogapit was just one small building. The first temple established by Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur was just a small building. Sri Chaitanya Math wasn't established. That was established in 1918. So all this development went on, but apart from that, there's so many maths. Even when I first went to Mayapur in 1976, there was those 4 establishments, practically Srila Sangha and Advaita Bhavana, it's the same campus anyway. In Mayapur itself, there were others, there's Rudra Paragaudiya Math, but that's a little away from Mayapur. But along that road, which we know as Bhaktisiddhanta Road, there were these 4 establishments. Then ISKCON came, and prior to that there was Sri Chaitanya Math, and that's Madhav Maharaj's Math, as it's known locally up to the present day, and Goswami Maharaj's Math, next to Madhav Maharaj's Math, which I can't remember the name of. And that was it, and it was all fields, lots of rice fields all around, and there was villages at a little distance, Miyapur, but they, and Bauman Pukur, but a post office was established there, which was unusual to have in such a rural place, to have it was a sub-post office. But amongst mostly illiterate people, because most people were illiterate in those days, and especially Muslims, villagers were illiterate, so why would the British establish a post office? They had a good relationship with the British rulers, and that was a huge step forward in their preaching, because they had magazines going out by subscription, and they could post them from Mayapur, and they would get mail coming in with questions, so it was a big step forward, and it really added to the authenticity of Mayapur, which is being established as the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. John Anderson came to Mayapur, that means he had confidence that these people are with us. And you can see the photo of the banner, God Save the King. When on the Silver Jubilee of Pancham George V, the Gauriya Math made a special edition of the Gauriya magazine with many photos praising George V. Now this went against the Indian independence movement and the rebel cause. It was very bold of Saraswati Thakur to do this. It was a decision he had to make. He could have remained neutral. He could have sided with the Congress. It was mostly led not only by the Congress. It wasn't only the Congress. In Maharashtra there was also the Congress. There was an organization which I can't remember the name of now. But politically it was led by the Congress. He could have sided with them, but he decided to go along with the current dispensation. He decided to do it. It's not ontology. It's not an intrinsic part of what he was doing. Nothing to do with his message. His message wasn't God Save the King. His message, well, yeah, I guess you could say that God save everyone. But his message wasn't British imperialism, but he went along with it and overtly supported it because he saw that was helpful in the Gauriya Math missionary activities. And that was very helpful when they went to the West, and sent devotees to the West. They had a good contact who was previously governor in Bengal, Lord Zetland. They had a good contact there. And he helped to arrange programs, and they were trusted by the British. When they went to Britain, the Gauriya Math emissaries, they were trusted by the British. They didn't have any security checks or any such thing. Which they wouldn't have been allowed to operate at all if it was considered that they were coming to England to foment trouble. So it was a policy he undertook. Now, you can imagine in the mind of John Anderson, he's also going for some political purpose, politician. Later he was nominated to be Prime Minister. He was such a big man, he was such a capable man. Winston Churchill nominated him to be Prime Minister if the present Prime Minister, Anthony Eden, was killed during the Second, which was quite possible because London was being bombed in the Second World War. So they said if he's killed, then put him in to be the Prime Minister. So he was a very, very capable man, and he went to Mayapur. No doubt he had some political motive. He wanted to show that siding with the British, I can only guess, he wanted to show that siding with the British is good for the Indian people. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing. But he was a much bigger figure. He was a symbol of the British power. Remember Calcutta was the capital of British India, British India and Burma, which stretched up to what is now the Pakistan borders with Afghanistan. The British tried to take Afghanistan, unsuccessful. So it was a huge, the jewel in the crown, the Indian Empire. So he went there for his purpose with the idea that, yes, we should be kind, we should be helpful to our loyal subjects, thinking himself in a morally and politically superior position, but without dislike or distaste. As many British did have dislike or distaste, but he was thinking how to do good for the Indians, but from the perspective that we British are superior, obviously, and we're here to help the Indians. So he went there with that attitude. And Saraswati Thakur is from the spiritual world. In God's eyes, much more important personality. But he went along with that. He went along with this for the sake of what he needed to do for preaching Krishna consciousness. He didn't preach to John Anderson, don't eat meat. He arranged meat to be served because it was normal for those who could afford it among the British that they would eat meat 3 times a day. Yeah, your lip is curling with this taste. Smrati Mukha Vikara, Sushti, Ishtivanant. Lip is curling with this taste. But he arranged for that because he wasn't trying to make John Anderson into a Hindu or a Vaishnava or even a vegetarian. He did great benefit to John Anderson by engaging him in Krishna's service and by bringing him to Mayapur. So that's just one perspective, given a lot. I was saying the ontology is more important than the morphology, but I've given a lot of morphology today. And at the end come to the ontology. Why he did what he did. Many people couldn't understand. Bhakti Rakshak Srila Maharaj, he said that, well, if we serve meat, that will not look good. It is not. How can we serve meat in Mayapur? How can we serve meat anywhere? Not that the devotees were serving meat. They arranged with the Calcutta hotel. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur says, I've been planning this for thousands of births. What do you say in reply to that? Very difficult to understand. So many things difficult to understand. So many times his disciples they wouldn't understand. Just like the materialistic demeanor cannot possibly stretch to the transcendental. Literally they wouldn't understand. And Srila Maharaj would listen, and after the talk of Saraswati Thakur, he would translate it to the rest of the devotees. In other words, he would speak it in ordinary Bengali that the devotees, he would understand and others couldn't understand. But other things also, Srila Maharaj is also deputed by other of his godbrothers to complain to Saraswati Thakur. One of the leading administrators in the Gaudiya Math is stealing money, large amounts of money. And Saraswati Thakur is a perfectly valid objection that we are going out working hard, bringing funds for the service of Krishna, and he's using some for the service of Krishna, but he's also using a large amount for his family, surreptitiously. And Saraswati Thakur rejected. He was angry with Srila. Why are you bringing this objection? He's an expert manager. If I had to pay someone to manage like this, I'd have to spend so much money. He's doing a good job. Leave him alone. What are the disciples supposed to think? That we're going out and collecting and we're not taking a cut, as is illegally and going on in ISKCON today. Collectors take a cut from the collection for their family. But he takes a cut. We're going out and telling people, I don't have any time, but I could go on for a lot longer. we're going out and telling people. And Saraswati Thakur, he wouldn't allow people to just go and collect in the name of anything mundane. He would say you have to preach to people and then get them to give money. So we're preaching to people about Krishna, and they were inducing people to give money for Krishna's service, but then so much is going over here, but we said no. And they had to accept. That's all. They could have gone away and discussed, but they didn't. They may not have understood it, but they just accepted. Our Guru has a higher vision. He was seen himself as a transcendental autocrat. That's a beautiful description of himself. He's referring to Krishna. Anyway, I'll finish here because the program is supposed to continue. Now with Pushpanjali. Is it now? What's the program now? It's under preparation still.
Yeah, they're going to make an offering here.
Oh, an offering is going to be made here, so it'll be at least 15, 20 minutes by the time they bring everything and offer it. Yeah, transcendental autocrat. You can see there's a photo of him with John Anderson, welcoming John Anderson as he got down from his launch in Mayapur, having come from Calcutta, presumably. Actually, I don't usually drink water while I'm speaking, but I need to drink a little bit. Try to avoid that. And Saraswati Thakur is dressed in a very unusual style, because it's a mixture of Indian sannyasi cloth with a kurta, which traditional sewn cloth sannyasis are wearing. And a very aristocratic looking Western style coat, long coat, and leather shoes with socks. I don't think there were any other kind of shoes in those days, only leather. Anything else? Any other kind of shoe? I don't think so. If there were shoes, there were. Even when I first went to Calcutta in 1976, most of the people walking the streets were barefoot. The economic condition of Calcutta was very bad at the time. And that's another whole history with refugees from Bangladesh and this and that. Wearing socks is completely Western. Shoes, that's there in Indian culture, but not much. Only certain people wear. Socks, not at all. Not that he would wear it. So it's a mixture, not all the time, but especially for important functions like this. So his dress style was a mixture of Indian traditional sannyasi style with the orange cloth and Western style, and decidedly aristocratic, effortlessly aristocratic. You can see by the way he's walking, gracefully aristocratic, and the slight smile on his face. He's very happy to have brought the governor here to Mayapur. And he has his reasons, which even if he tried to explain them to the governor could not understand at all. He was happy seeing this as an important step for the Gauriya Math. So a look of satisfaction on his face that it's come to this. Such a big personality, a major figure in the British Empire, has come to Mayapur. Srila Prabhupada, speaking about Mayapur, said if you can bring Indira Gandhi, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur will take you back to Radha. Now, it wasn't necessarily that Prabhupada endorsed everything that Indira Gandhi stood for, but she was the Prime Minister of India, a very important figure. So you can see it's the same kind of understanding. He was a transcendental aristocrat in a completely different kind of mode to the aristocrats of this world. But see, they could, John Anderson and other aristocratic people, could relate to Saraswati Thakur. They could relate at some level, they could converse with them. Saraswati Thakur spoke excellent English, no doubt. So they could converse with them, and even on intellectual subjects. And that was very important for Saraswati Thakur. He wanted to present Krishna consciousness in a manner that would be accepted by the elite. If he had followed literally the example of his own Guru Maharaj, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, there's no way he could have established the Gauriya Math. One thing that Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was a recluse. He didn't even like to have people around him. And he demanded a very high standard immediately. If you want to be around me, then be like me, and not just in imitation. Practically you have to be a Paramahamsa to be with Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. He wouldn't accept anything less than that. But Saraswati Thakur made arrangements so that people could follow the process of Vaidhi Bhakti, aiming at Raganuga Bhakti, aiming at Gokul Vrindavan, Golok Vrindavan. He made a process by which people could come with their anarthas and become purified. Saraswati Thakur, if he had gone dressed as about like Gandhi, he dressed in the style of cloth that Sadhu or even many ordinary grihastas at the time were dressed like that, the way Gandhi dressed. Decidedly Indian style. But people, Westerners listened to Gandhi because he had galvanized the Indian public against the Britishers. Because of the power that he wielded and the threat he yielded to them. But if it was anyone dressed like that, they wouldn't normally take seriously. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to make the elite comfortable, both physically and mentally. So physically he arranged morphology, he arranged big temples for people. Actually now we see in terms of ISKCON, the Glories temples are not very big. But he arranged the facilities, he'd give them wooden chairs, Western style wooden chairs to sit on in the temple. That's also unheard of. Nowadays it's normal to have chairs in the temple. Otherwise that was not allowed. You have to sit on the floor. Or if the speaker can sit on a raised seat. Usually not this raised, it would be about this raised. A little choky. That was it. Not very comfortable or any such thing. So he, to make them mentally comfortable, physically comfortable, and mentally comfortable by acting as an aristocrat, in the sense that the same kind of manners and mannerisms. He was a cultured person. He was raised like that in the Bengali Bhadralok. We call it Bhadralok, the gentle people, the middle class Bengalis, more cultured and educated, moral, intellectual, concerned with the condition of the world. So he was aristocratic in that sense. Now we know of Rupa and Sanatana, Chakva Tura Vasheshamanya Lapati Sreni Sada Tuchava. The six Goswamis, Rupa and Sanatana had immense wealth and immense political power. Raghunath Das had immense wealth. They gave it all up as insignificant. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he wasn't from a wealthy background, but he made so many temples, he took wealth and established himself among the aristocratic society. He was able to do so by Krishna's mercy, but he positioned himself within society, among the aristocracy, or the more educated class, so that he could preach to them. And he preached in a manner that would appeal to them intellectually. Because mostly Vaishnavas were thought, well, they just give talks, stories, they tell some stories, and a bunch of women and lower class people come and they sing along with them and they cry a little bit. And it's not for intellectuals. Vedanta is for intellectuals. Not all these stories from Puranas, all this kind of thing. So Saraswati Thakur, he amazed intellectuals, both Indian and Western, by his intellect. His aim wasn't intellectualism per se, his aim was to get the message over, the message of surrender to Krishna. But if he had not been intellectually at least on the same level as them, and actually, even from the intellectual point of view, way above most of the intellectual people, then they wouldn't have respected him. The general tendency was to disrespect Vaishnavism. As one thing, it was considered very low class, because generally low class people would take to it. The followers, they were the Goswamis, who were Brahmin by caste, but they mostly ministered to lower class people. And then there were many who, in the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, were leading illicit lives, sexually degraded lives. Nowadays, you don't have to take cover of religion to do so. You can be sexually degraded and be proud of it. Gay pride. For instance, slut march. Slut is a word which means something like, you would say randi, something like that. You say in Hindi? Magi is another word. Prostitute. Slut march. Be proud of what would previously be considered degradation. So it was a huge challenge to preach among such people. But he showed himself to be on their level economically, intellectually, culturally, and he wanted to catch these people with the idea that yad yad achrati shreshtas tata deveta sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadam bhakti. And that was our own Srila Prabhupada's initial idea also in preaching in the West, but Krishna had other plans for the spread of his movement. Yeah, about that, there was, I was saying how that in Bengal especially there was a lot of political unrest, and there was a saying among the British, the Bengalis are our enemies. The Marwaris are our friends, because the Marwaris saw in the British that, okay, we do business with them. They do business and our business prospers also. And Bengalis, Marwaris and the South Indians are our servants. That's what was considered among the British. Because there wasn't so much political unrest from the south side. It tended to be quite docile and cooperative. Saraswati Thakur was an exception among prominent Bengalis in as much as he cooperated with the British. Well, there were others also. The Thakur family was very prominent, and they also they didn't have, anyway, that's a whole thing. I don't get too much into that. I don't speak about them too much, but yeah, they were also willing to go along with the current dispensation. At that time, things changed a lot. There was a big shift. The British themselves did much to further the aims of the independence movement by the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, in which it was thought that, well, peaceful means aren't going to work. These people are savage. Even though Indian Rajas themselves have been doing similar things to certain of their citizens. Are we ready now? Offering. Ready mean, are we ready to do, what's going on? Are we ready to do the Pushpanjali?
Yes, yes.
Shall we start at Pushpanjali or not? Shall we start now? Okay.
Can we announce about the book, Bhaktisiddhanta?
Yeah, good idea. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinubhyascha pranam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo Dante Hey, sadhava sakha.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
No.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your attention. We had Bhaktisiddhanta Bible book is compiled a lot of research over 20 years, a lot of information about the teachings, the life of Saraswati Thakur, as explained by Maharaj in today's class. It's a very important book for every member of ISKCON. So if you don't have this book, I highly recommend, I strongly request you to please take a copy, and Maharaj also bless you by touching the book. The amount is 2,500 rupees. So please, we have a book table back there. So please visit the book table and collect a copy.
Where's the nearest place I can go to pass water?
Hare Krishna. So, just for today, we have a special playlist in the app with 21 lectures of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Swami Maharaj, and you can find even more through the facilities in the app, deep search and all the rest. So, you can get the app and hear the lectures. Thank you very much.
Is the mic? Mike, okay, 1 minute. Rajesh, Mike.
Just give the mic.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Loud, volume.
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Hare Krishna. As you all know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, and our Srila Prabhupada, these three are considered very special, revolutionary acharyas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is called Seventh Goswami, and Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur's innovation, creativity, a new type of revolution in preaching. The details are available in this book. Actually, earlier to this book, we have used to gather from different places bits and pieces of information. Now, for example, one of it is the diorama show. He was the first one to start a diorama display. In the same manner, book distribution and taking it on a mass scale, and also preaching to a light class of people. And these kind of topics are little more elaborately explained with very minute details in this book. And especially those who are preachers, Bhakti leaders, they want to see that they want to connect it into educated class of people, light people, top-notch people of society. They'll get a lot of innovative ideas. What Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, what is to be avoided, what is to be adopted. So, very interesting book. I had read and extracted past tense from this book and made a file. But nevertheless, there are very, very exhaustively presented details in volumes. So it would be very great asset. If any of you don't have it, it would be very, very valuable for you to have it. Gauranga was telling that very little information is available for us about the 6 Goswamis and other acharyas down the line. But fortunately, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur is just above our Srila Prabhupada. So we have, Maharaj has done enormous research and going personally there to Bengal and Bangladesh and gathering information from various people from Gaudiya Math and everything. He had a very big team of people gathering information, and then he has to process it, and just like you all know Lilamrita, right now, Prabhupada Lilamrita. In the same manner, this book is like Lilamrita of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. It's very, in Pune, of course, but a very big sale when it came to Pune. Here also it was very valuable to have it. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So we have Pushpanjali now, please stand up. And flowers in the hand, at the end, please come and offer it. Don't throw the flowers.
Hare Krishna. So whatever bunch of flowers you get, you have to make it in 3 parts. First time you will offer only 1 part, then second time second part, and then third part. Okay? Om Ajnana Vedandhasya
ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिसिद्धान्त सरस्वती इति नामिने श्रीवार्षभानवी देवी गायिताय कृपाब्धये कृष्णसम्बन्ध विज्ञान गायिने प्रभवे नमः माधुर्योज्ज्वल प्रेमाढ्य श्रीरूपानुग भक्तिदा श्रीगौरकरुणाशक्ति विग्रहाय नमोस्तुते नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्तये दीनतारिणे रूपानुग विरुद्ध अपसिद्धान्त कान्तहारिणे नमो गौरकिशोराय साक्षात् वैराग्यमूर्तये प्रलम्भारसाम्बोधे पादाम्बुजायते नमः नमो भक्तिविनोदाय सच्चिदानन्दनामिने गौरशक्तिस्वरूपाय रूपानुगवरायते गौराविर्भावभूमेस्त्वं निर्देष्टा वैष्णवभौमश्री जगन्नाथाय नमः सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो कृष्ण प्रेम प्रधायते चैतन्य तावत् भक्ताख्यं नमामि दिव्यात् बृन्दारण्यकल्पद्रुमात् श्रीमद्रत्नागार पुनः गौरांगी वृंदावनेश्वरी ज्ञान आदि गौरव हरे कृष्णा हरे हरे राम portion please up and keep the third with you. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Saraswati Varshavaanavi Devi Hitaya Kripabdhaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayine Prabhave Namaha Madhuryojvala Premadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Dhanta Dvanta Harine Desha Pushpanjali Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur ki Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Namine Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabdhaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Bala Prema Table.